Hello, I'm Dave Dino, and this is Champions of Justice.
We are the champions, my friend.
This is the program that takes you behind the scenes with those who make the laws and those who protect your rights through the rule of law. Your host is attorney Thomas Girardi. Bringing clarity to the headline-generating legal challenges of the day, and we've got a very different kind of a program for you today. Our guest is Phillip Maltin. Phillip Maltin has become the go-to speaker for business leaders and organizations all across North America who use his exclusive READ system for deception detection.
I have found that the most powerful technique in terms of uncovering deception, which is one that is receiving a lot of attention in the literature within about the last 3 or 4 years. The technique is withholding the truth. It's withholding information. And it's one that I think that good trial lawyers probably already know, and you see it a lot in deposition. What we would do is we would meet the expert. We would, in the best of all possible worlds for using these techniques, you would try to lower the expert's anxiety, or any witness's or any person's anxiety. You would try to get them to speak as freely as you could, so you'd get that baseline on how they act when they're speaking freely about things that you would have a reasonably good idea were truthful.
So I'm going to ask him, hey, how do you feel? I'm going to ask him, did you go to Marquette University, and graduated there? Questions like that. So he's answering those in a certain fashion, and he did feel good today, and he did go to Marquette, and he did get his degree, etc. So I have that sort of a baseline. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a baseline that you can develop right then, which is a baseline for nervousness. You've got a pretty good idea, given the context, that the person you're speaking with is probably not going to be 100% comfortable unless they're on some kind of beta blockers or something, and you wouldn't know. And you can use that as a baseline for later when you're speaking with them and you ask them certain questions and their behavior changes. You can say to yourself, in what way is the behavior changing now? Is it changing in a way that is consistent with what I saw to begin with when we were talking about things where I thought the expert might be a little bit nervous but truthful? Or is it changing in a way that I hadn't seen before that makes me think I got a hot spot here? I may not be getting the entire story. I need to dig in.
You're listening to Champions of Justice with Tom Girardi. That's our guest, Phillip Maltin. He is a partner in the Employment Law and Commercial Law Departments of Gordon Reese LLP. Our topic on the table today is the detection of truth and deception. Tom?
Okay, so you think that if the person is not giving you the whole story, you think that you can form an opinion, that a realistic opinion, that there's more that this person should be talking about.
Yeah, I think you can. I think you can. Can I give you a couple of examples?
Yeah, no, I need one. This is
Okay.
I'm writing all this down. Okay, so go ahead.
I have a law partner, Chris Wagner, real good guy. And I was talking to one of the lawyers in my firm about yoga, because yoga is the thing that's keeping me together at this stage in my life. You know, it's what I need in order to be more active. And so I was talking to this lawyer, and I said, yeah, I'm doing yoga. I love it. Chris Wagner walks up, and he says, what are you guys talking about? And I said, we're talking about yoga. Chris flashes on his face a micro-expression of contempt, which is an expression on the face which is asymmetric. Imagine a half smile and a wrinkle of the nose. And it happens in a brief moment, less than a second, less than half a second. Micro-expression of contempt. That's scientifically grounded. That's a scientifically grounded conclusion, that certain expressions of emotion on the face reveal a real emotion that the person is feeling. So Chris flashes a micro-expression of contempt, and I say to Chris, what's your problem with yoga? And Chris says, I don't have a problem with yoga. And I said, no, you definitely have a problem with yoga. And he says, I don't think I have a problem with yoga. And I said, just tell me how you feel about yoga. I need to know. And he goes, I love it. Now I'm thinking I got myself a liar here, right? Chris is lying to me. And then Chris says, you know, I bought a year-long program at a yoga studio and I never used a single lesson. The contempt was not about yoga. It was about his decision to buy the year-long program. So the point being, you may see a cluster of emotion. You may see an expression of emotion. You may see a cluster of nervousness. When you start thinking that you can read a person's mind about what it means, you start sending yourself down the wrong road. What I should have said in that moment with Chris, and I learned, what I should have said was, Chris, is there something that you feel about yoga? Chris, is there an emotion that you have about yoga? Did something happen with you with yoga? Instead of saying you hate yoga, that was my own attempt and my own incorrect attempt at trying to understand what he was feeling.
Okay, but the key thing here is it's the first fraction of a second that tells the story.
Yes.
It tells you that something is not perhaps as it's spoken.
It could tell you that. Okay, so when Chris says, I love yoga, and he flashes a micro-expression of contempt, I'm not gonna conclude what Chris is thinking. I'm just gonna say, Chris is feeling something that's in opposition to what he's saying. I need to figure out what it is.
Right.
Okay, is there more than that? Is there more than the facial expression with respect to the question that you look at?
Yes, absolutely. The micro-expression of emotion is an expression of emotion. It's going to tell you what a person is feeling. It's not going to tell you the origin. It's not going to tell you why they're feeling it. But then we also began by talking about
see, hang on.
Sure.
This is pretty important. Listen, in this case, we're seeking a lot of money for damages, for pain and suffering. Would you go along with that sort of a situation if that's the law? See, if I have that first microsecond of saying, hey, Girardi, go sit down. Well, you know, that one little microsecond, that's going to tell me a lot.
It sure is.
Because I know what the answer is. Well, sure, I'll follow the law. See?
But you want to see that initial momentary reaction.
Don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
But here's what gets really interesting, Tom, is that imagine this. Imagine that that we're doing voir dire on Dave, and you say to Dave, how do you feel about large verdicts? Are you comfortable with large verdicts? And Dave shakes his head yes. And then you say, if in this case, the law were to require a particular outcome, would you be able to do that? He says to you yes as he shakes his head no.
Right.
Okay?
Sure.
And then you walk away saying, oh, I got to get rid of Dave because Dave's body is inconsistent. It's disjointed from his message, from what he's saying. And this is another one of these things where you walk away thinking, I was able to read this guy's mind, and in reality what Dave was thinking was, I have no problem following the law. No, I will not violate the law if it requires me to come back with a high verdict. Therefore, yes, I can do that, Tom. And so you need to really remember that you have to do a couple things, which is to get that baseline on Dave. When Dave shakes his head no and says the word yes, is it because he's thinking I couldn't do anything but this? Or is Dave's baseline that when he always says yes, his head goes up and down, and when he always says no, his head goes side to side? That's why it takes a little bit more digging than what I think is being taught out there by a lot of people who want to teach techniques by which people inaccurately will read people quickly. People are looking for the quick hit.
Phil, I have one final question. Have you been telling the truth today on this show? I noticed, first of all, the facial expression, Dave Dino and I both picked it up.
He's been moving around a lot.
Exactly. We got it. Have you been telling the truth?
Well, the answer is, what's my baseline?
Oh, I like it. You have been listening to Champions of Justice with Tom Girardi. Our guest today is Phillip Maltin. He is a partner in the Employment Law and Commercial Law Departments of Gordon Reed's LLP. Our producer is Amanda Mars. I'm Dave Dino, and a final thought for the day. It comes from Clarence Darrow. And he was a little rough in his language. Chase after the truth like hell, and you'll free yourself. Well, our guest chases after the truth in that same way. And as such, he is a champion of justice. Thank you for joining us.
We are the champions.